Hello and welcome back to another YouTube video. Today I'm doing a flex pick tier list. So this is going to be champions which can flex into multiple roles. There is a lot of them within the game. I'm not going to include like things with unique pairings, so things like center pairings or things that just can't really function within that role without certain parameters around it. Things like Yumi top, for example, wouldn't work because you're very much reliant on holding your tower for a decent chunk of the game. And if someone like Fiora is laning against Yumi top, then you are just going to take your tower at 5 minutes and it's just going to be a disaster. So I'm not going to include things like that. A lot of this is just very much going to be if they function within that role and have value within the game, and it makes sense to put them there, then I will include it. So to begin with, Aatrox. Aatrox has two roles he can flex to. He's a really good top and mid laner. He can also kind of clear the jungle. It's not particularly fast. He has a bit of a amp towards jungle monsters because he knocks them up for twice as long on his empowered Qs. But overall, just not great as a jungler. Has a lot of weaknesses, so I'm not going to include him there. But yeah, two really strong roles in mid and top. Performs really well as a mid laner, actually, so definitely consider that, trying that. Ari is mostly just going to be picked as a mid laner. Has had support presence in the past, but that was when Emax was a bit more of option. I haven't really seen a huge amount of Ari support since. I believe it should still work. I don't see why it wouldn't. But as the champion's pretty gold, like pretty needing of gold, you can go things like the Everfrost, but I don't think it's great compared to a lot of other support options, so I'm just going to include it in the 1 tier because it functions well as a mid laner, and that is where the pick is mostly going to be seen. Akali is technically a two-way flex. Top and mid see a decent amount of play. You're not going to see her anywhere else. She can't clear the jungle. She doesn't really have any value as an ADC or a support pick. Yeah, but the champ can function in both roles, is getting buff next match, so should see maybe some play in both. Akshan is a two-way flex as well. Both mid and top has strong value in both. Alistar, for a while, was considered someone who could be played top, mid, and jungle, because he has kind of workarounds towards playing jungle Alistar where he doesn't need to clear as much and just focuses on ganking. And then top lane Alistar obviously had that bit of play earlier on into the year when he saw a lot of buffs. It wasn't good. People kind of sucked at it, and the champ itself kind of sucked. So I wouldn't recommend trying him anywhere other than support at the moment. He still functions really well as a support, so definitely really good there. Amumu is a two-way flex, has really strong value in the jungle, also has really strong value as a support. Both work really well. His support power is actually really insane because he has 3 forms of really good crowd control and a lot of damage within his kit, so lots of value there. Anivia is a 3-way flex pick. She has value in the top lane, she has value in the mid lane, and can function as a support with pairings and just as a standalone, actually, which is why she is a 3-way flex pick. Her damage is really high, her ward is really powerful with a tool, and there are kind of unique ways you can play Anivia. I wouldn't recommend going down the tank Anivia route. I know there is someone who does play Heartsteel Grasp Anivia, but you're mostly going to be going things like your Roa or your Liandry's, not really anything other than that. Annie is a 2-way flex pick. I've seen people play Annie top, but it doesn't see very much play, and it's more of a unique pick if anything. It can kind of function, but yeah, I mean, I'll include it in free picks because there are places where you can pick this as a top laner. But yeah, really good support because she has really good crowd control. Her Tibbets has a lot of value within the game. Also works really well as a mid laner, so lots of value there. Aphelios, I know there's one guy who plays Aphelios top, but you're mostly just going to see Aphelios ADC. Not really going to see him anywhere else other than that. Ashe is an ADC and a support pick. Not doing too great as a support at the moment, I believe, but really powerful as an ADC. Asol is a 2-way flex pick. He can work both as a top laner and a mid laner. His ability to just wave clear and kind of bully out top laners when you have things like Liandry's and a lot of stacks, because you do a lot of percentage maximum health, is quite powerful. Does put him in a bit of a vulnerable state if with the longer lane though, so you do have to be careful of that, but does function in 2 roles. Same goes for Azir. Actually, Azir is a really good top laner. He's probably a better top laner than he is a mid laner, because he has matchups which he can completely stomp in the top lane, and he's just a really safe laner with things like the EQ combo to get you out of lane if you are being ganked. Bard is a 1-way pick. You're not going to see Bard mid or top. He doesn't really function in these roles quite well. He oftentimes will just get sieged against. I think if you're really good at the pick, then you can kind of make these work, but for the most part, you're only going to be playing bard support, not seeing him anywhere else other than that. Belveth, actually a two-way flex pick. Belveth's support is pretty good. There is someone on the Brazilian server who plays Deadman's first Belveth, I believe, as a support pick, and she's seen picks in like professional leagues and seen picks in other regions as well, so I'm definitely going to include that. But for the most part, you're going to see her in the jungle. Blitzcrank is a one-way pick. You can kind of clear the jungle with Blitz because they did try and give him some buffs, which allowed him to do things there. They also tried to allow him to have some laning potential with things like the W change where it now has on hit. And yeah, his E does bonus damage to monsters, I believe. But it never really caught on. It kind of struggled, so for the most part, you're only going to see him as a support. Brand is a two-role flex pick. Both mid and support Brand, pretty good. Not really going to see any jungle Brand. He doesn't clear particularly well, has a lot of vulnerabilities, not a reliable pick there either. But if he was to see a small amount of jungle buffs, maybe a tiny bit tapped on, like a 25% bonus damage on the passive or something, I could definitely see him seeing some play there. But for the most part, mid and support Brand is where you're going to see him. Braum is a support. Can't really play anywhere else. He's too he doesn't have the resources to wave clear particularly well, and it just means he struggles elsewhere. Caitlyn, you're only really going to see in the ADC role. We have seen spikes of Caitlyn support in the past, but it's more very much of a niche thing where you are very much just trying to use your lane bully prowess to get a lot of value within that. Past that, not really going to see it though. Camille is a two-way flex pick. Both mid and top Camille are really good. She's actually always been kind of like this sleeper mid laner. You don't see her played a lot there, but she definitely functions quite well as a mid laner, has decent resistances, and has really good pick potential. So it would make sense to have value there. We have seen Camille support in the LCK. I'm pretty sure Carrier played it like half a year ago or something. I'm not going to include like one game off of Camille's support. I mean, yeah, I guess it can work because she technically has a long range CC ability, but I wouldn't recommend it. Cassie is a two-role flex pick. She works both mid and top. You're not going to see any support or ADC Cassie. In the past, I think ADC Cassie had a bit of a spike in play, but it's not been recent, and I definitely recommend playing her only top or mid. Both roles work really well because you can kite out most top laners and bully most of them out of lane. Cho'Gath kind of has three roles he can play, even more if you kind of go back a bit. Yeah, he can play top, mid for sure. AP is most likely going to be the way you play him mid. Top is usually tank. He has seen players in ADC. It wasn't bad. Like, it functioned quite well with certain pairings. So I'm going to include him actually as an ADC pick because it wasn't tied to Senna. However, he can play with Senna. I've seen things like Rakan and just good like crowd control pairings. So overall, there is play there. In the past, he used to be able to clear the jungle quite well, but at the moment, not looking too great. So I'm not going to include that. Corki is a one-role flex. You're not going to see Corki elsewhere other than mid lane. He kind of struggles in mid lane in general at the moment. Maybe if he was a bit stronger, you'd see some top Corki, but for the most part, mid Corki it is. Darius is a two-role flex pick. You can play him jungle. He actually has a relatively strong jungle clear and can contest most junglers. He struggles with ganks, but overall, that's kind of like his only weakness as a jungler. He has good 1v1s, he has good 2v2s, he has a good clear. Mainly just the jungle clear. Mainly just the gank potential, which he struggles with. Diana is a two-way flex pick. Works both well in the mid and jungle. Mundo is a two-way flex pick as well, works quite well in the top lane and in the jungle. Jungle Mundo not seeing as much play at the moment. Is in probably one of its weaker spots, but can still definitely play there. Draven is a one-way pick. You're not going to see him come out mid or top. There are people who say Draven top does function, and I mean, I believe it should. I don't see anything wrong with playing this champion as a top lane if you're warding and doing the setup correctly. He is really high early damage, but because we don't see it like at all, I'm just gonna leave him in the one-role flex pick. Echo is a two-role pick. We're not seeing any of this tank Echo top anymore. It's very much just mid and jungle Echo we see. Elise is a one-way pick. We have seen people play Elise top and mid in the past, along with support Elise, but right now she only really sees playing the jungle. I'm pretty sure mid Elise still does work. Things like the PTA, like a very aggressive play style, is what we used to see. And support Elise can also function. She is really powerful as an early game champion, has a really good CC spell, but I'm not going to recommend both these roles at the moment, mainly just going to be played as a jungler. Eve, once upon a time, had buffs to try and help her as a laner. It never caught on. She's a jungler. That's kind of the only role you're going to see her. Ezreal actually has two roles. You can play him both mid and AD. Mid, you oftentimes see AP. It doesn't look great, but it kind of function. I'd actually just probably recommend going AD Ezreal mid. AP Ezreal isn't doing just great. It doesn't have great itemization at the moment. So mainly just going to be AD. Fiddlesticks. Fiddlesticks is one of those ones where he technically is a 4-role flex pick. You can play him jungle, support, mid, top. I'm not sold on mid or top Fiddlesticks, but we have seen people make these work. So they do technically function as that, and the support fiddle is actually pretty good if you're playing it correctly. And then jungle obviously is his main role, so fiddle technically a 4-role flex pick, so gonna put him there. Fiora is a one role pick. You're not really gonna see Fiora anywhere other than the top lane. She doesn't have a terrible jungle clear, I believe. Once you have Tiamat, you can actually clear the jungle quite well. Really good single target damage. Her E functions quite well against jungle monsters. You can still use the W to deny hits if you're getting low in the jungle. But overall, many only going to see Fiora in the top lane. Fizz is a mid laner. Don't really see Fizz anywhere outside of the mid lane. Galio is a mid laner and a support. Support Galio doesn't actually see a huge amount of play at the moment. It's definitely mostly mid Galio. I think there are issues with the champion, which people just don't particularly like playing him at the moment, which is why his popularity is relatively low, but can function in 2 roles. Gangplank is a 2-role pick. You can play him both top and mid. Garen, technically a 3-role pick. He can function within a jungle hit. Once again, like Darius, his clear is really good. He has really good 1v1 and 2v2 potential. He does kind of struggle with like even more with ganks, which is why he's probably slightly worse than Darius when it comes down to it. But he does function quite well as a mid and a top laner, so I'm going to put him in the 3-role. Nah, technically a 2-role, but I'm going to leave him in the 1-role. You don't really see Nah outside of the top lane. However, he does function in the mid lane. I know people in the past used to play like an on-hit variant of Nah, where you could go things like your Bork, your Nashes, your Witsends, your Ginsus, stuff like this, because he had really good ratios, which allowed him to kind of do it. But for the most part, you only really see Nah in the top lane at the moment. Gragas is a 4-way flex pick because he can technically do support, mid, top, and jungle. Of course, these all kind of got hit with the passive nerf not too long ago. Doesn't see as much play in all of them, but still does function quite well in all of them. Graves is a 3-way flex pick. You will see him mid, top, and jungle. Insanity plays him mid and the LCS quite often. Functions quite well, has good build variance, is a good jungler, and can still function as a top laner. Things like your Ravenous Hydra. I know people like going with Triforce on the Gore Drinker, but you can still go things like your Yomus and that kind of build path. Gwen is a 2-way flex pick. Well, Gwen is a 1-way pick at the moment. You don't really see her anywhere other than the top lane. She's kind of been nerfed too much to really function as a jungler at this point. And you're not really going to see any Gwen mid. So Gwen kind of just functions as a top laner. Hecarim is a jungler, has been nerfed too much to really function as a top laner or in general, any real lane. He can't farm waves that well. His Q does like 70% damage to minions, I believe, because we used to have Hecarim top within pro play. I'm pretty sure it used to be like Ignite TP Hecarim top 4-5 years ago maybe. Heimerdinger is able to play ADC, mid, top, and support. He's a 4-role flex pick. He actually functions quite well within all 4 of his roles at the moment. Alawi is a 2-role flex pick. You can play her both mid and top. I know her mid play rate kind of dwindles. It's mostly popularized by streamers or pro players playing it, but things like the Duskblade Alawi on this patch does work. Next patch, it'll probably struggle. Aurelia is a 2-role flex pick. not really going to play already anywhere other than mid and top. She doesn't really clear the jungle, but she functions quite well within both mid and top. Ivan works as a support, mid laner, top laner, and jungle. However, he's kind of seen a real dip in play in all roles bar jungle. But he still technically does function in all four. He works well as a support because of the amount of utility he gives. He can work well with certain pairings as well. Things like Caitlyn with the headshots, with Rengar as an ADC, but then I would not include Rengar as an ADC because he very much only works with Ivan as a unique pairing. Janna is a one-role pick. You're not going to see any roaming Janna tops anymore. It kind of faded. So for the most part, just Janna support. Jarvan, not really going to see him anywhere other than the jungle. Jarvan top has really just kind of died. It doesn't see pick. It's the main reason you saw Jarvan top was because it was getting picked into Kennen, but now you don't even really see that. So Jarvan really only functions as a jungler and maybe as a support because but the problem with Jarvan support, he only really sees play with Kalista. So, like, I'm not going to put him in higher tiers because he's conditioned to certain picks, like the Kalista or against Kennen. So, just going to leave him in the one pick. If he's stronger, he does function as a multi-pick laner. And if he was to see E-buffs, then he probably does work as a top laner again, definitely. So, going to leave him in the one flex tier, but you're not going to play him outside of this. I just don't think he has insane value. Jax is a 3-role flex pick, technically. He sees play mid, he sees plays jungle, but his mid play isn't a huge amount, so I'm probably just going to leave him in the 2 pick. He does clear the jungle quite well, he does actually have a decent player base in the jungle, and then of course he is mostly played in the top lane. Jace is a 2-way pick, he is played mid and top. Jhin is a 1-way pick, he is played ADC. Jinx is an ADC. Cassante sees play in 2 roles, both mid and top. Kaiser sees play in 2 roles, mid and ADC. Kalista sees play in just ADC. Not seeing any Kalista tops at the moment. It used to work with like Sanguine Blade, but you don't really see anyone playing it anymore. Karma is a 3-way flex pick. She can play top, mid, and support. Especially with the buffs next patch, I reckon they will all be a lot better as well. Karthus is a 4-way flex pick because you can play him ADC, jungle, mid, and top. However, top Karthus doesn't see a huge amount of play, so I'm just going to put him in the 3-way flex pick. But there's places where Karthus top does function. Definitely. Actually, you know what? I'll put him in 4-way. Yeah, he can play top, jungle, mid, and AD. All these are actually relatively strong and have value within the draft. So, yeah, definitely functions like that. Kassadin is really only going to see play as a mid laner. Same goes for Katarina. Kayle can play 2 roles. She can play both mid and top. Kayle mid really doesn't see a huge amount of play anymore, but it still does have a play rate and it still has value within the draft. Kayn is a 1-way pick. No, okay. Kayn can function in the top lane, but then it requires very, very good setup and a pro player, or not a pro player, Drew to play it. Now, I think Kayn top can work. You just have to learn it really well. And then I guess you can say it has value if you're playing it into comps where Kayn does work, but you're mainly going to be I mean, you can play both forms of Kayn. I guess, yeah, fair enough. Like, he can play in 2 different roles. Kennen, actually a really good 2-role flex pick. He can play both mid and top. His mid's actually really good. I've always been saying this about Kennen and how, like, insane his mid is. He has really good matchups. He works really well as a mid laner because it frees up a tank slot in the top lane as well. Kha'Zix, only really going to see play in the jungle. Nothing Bruiser Kha'Zix with the W kind of eliminated any sort of play we saw of him in the top lane. Kindred only really sees play in the jungle. Not really any ADC mid or top Kindred. She can still function as a mid or a top laner. Her wave clear isn't particularly bad. She can play out of a lot of laners, but then you're very much tied to your mark system oftentimes in the jungle. So, yeah, just going to leave her in the 1 flex pick tier. Clyde, actually a 2-way flex pick. Works both quite well in the top lane and in the jungle. Kog'Maw, 2-way as well, works both mid and ADC. LeBlanc, only really going to see play mid. I know people play it top and support. You know, I'll put it in the 2-pick tier list because there are actually enough people who play it top to kind of like merit it. But yeah, it does function in the top lane because of the wave clear, the harass on enemy top laners. You do kind of stunt your draft a bit, but it can function. Yeah, people definitely do play it, so yeah, I'll put him the 2 pick. Lee Sin, I'm going to leave him in 1 because you don't really see Lee Sin top or mid anymore. It kind of died down when they nerfed the E as much as they did. Leona is a 1-way pick. You're not going to see Leona anywhere other than support. Lydia is a 2-way pick. You will see some Lydia top and some Lydia jungle. However, Lydia top is kind of dying at the moment. Not a lot of people play it at this point. Only like Evie plays it competitively, and it looks pretty bad, so yeah, but it still does see some play there. Lissandra, see some play support, see some play mid. I know Lissandra's support, I believe, is being popularized by some people at the moment because it can work really well as a pick potential support. Lucian actually works as a 3-way flex pick. I would not recommend playing Lucian anywhere other than ADC in standard play though. In pro play, he does have 3 roles he can play, which are both top, mid, and ADC, but you're really only going to see ADC Lucian. I wouldn't recommend playing him in his 2 other roles. I think he just struggles too much into a lot of lanes, and a lot of his part is tied into his passive. Lulu, at the moment, is a 1-way pick, but maybe with the changes to the next patch, we see some Lulu lane, but I don't see it happening. Q has a minion modifier to make sure stuff like this does not happen. Lux is a 2-way flex pick, both support and mid. Malphite is a 2-way flex pick, both mid and top. Not really going to see any Malphite support. It isn't good. I don't play it. Most people play it only because of Yasuo. I wouldn't recommend playing it otherwise in that role. I only really see it mid and top because it works quite well in both. Malzahar works both mid and top lane. He used to see a lot more top lane play, but as of the moment, it's a bit limited. I don't know. I don't think he sees enough top play to actually merit him as a top laner. He does work really well as a mid laner. Some people do play Malzahar support, but once again, it's very niche. You're not seeing a huge amount of it. So yeah, one-way pick. Maokai works well as a top laner, a jungler, and a support. He is a 3-way flex pick. Really good in that space as well. Yi, only really going to see play in the jungle. We have seen people in the past play like lane Yi, but it's not particularly popular, and it tends to be if you have a Taric pairing. Milio, only really seeing play support. Maybe with the changes to this patch, we see some lane Milio, but I don't believe so. MF sees play in both support and ADC. It's never been great as a support. It used to be picked as like a niche thing into Zyra, but these days doesn't really perform that well, so kind of skeptical on the 2 pick, but yeah, sees play both support and ADC. Mordekaiser sees play in 3 roles, but he is actually pretty good in mid, jungle, and top, so actually has value in all 3 of those roles. Morgana is a 3-way flex pick. She works mid, jungle, and support, but she's terrible. So I will put her in the 3-way flex pick because she technically does work in all 3. She can clear minion waves. She does have an alright jungle clear, and her support isn't too bad, but she's just not great as a champion. She has a lot of weaknesses, and overall, she is a 3-way flex pick, so yeah. Nefari, actually a 2-way flex pick. 3 if you include jungle, but it's not great. It's pretty bad, but she's definitely a really good mid and top laner. If you include jungle, then it's fair, but I think her jungle play rate's going to die out relatively quickly, so I'll put it in 3 for the moment, but it can be considered 2. Nami is only really going to see play as a support. Nasus sees play well, like Nasus is a good mid laner and a good top laner. He's not a great support and he's not a great jungler. He does function in both those roles. I'm going to include him in 3 roles because we actually have seen people play support Nasus in competitive, and it can function into a couple of ADCs with some strong pairings, but Nasus jungle is just a low elo pick. You're not going to see this anywhere other than like fun low elo pick, so I'll put him in 3 roles. Nautilus, however, actually functions as a top jungle, mid, and support pick. He was a lot better when we had the Catalyst, but you can still kind of maybe go Catalyst. I don't believe you are going to go Catalyst though. I think you mainly just go like your Sunfires and your Abyssal without the Catalyst. But yeah, still works as a 4-role flex pick, has relatively good wave clear, has good damage, can trade with a lot of top laners, trade with a lot of mid laners, has an alright jungle clear, does see competitive jungle play, along with competitive support play, so it can function there. Nico works as a support, a mid laner, a top laner, and a jungle. Also another pick which can kind of go 4 ways. Which one is probably the weakest? It probably is top Nico. I think our jungle clear isn't too bad. I think top Nico, it does work if you take it like the on-hit route. I don't know if we see a lot of AP top Nikos, but she's a pretty good mid laner. She's pretty good support, and yeah, pretty good jungler. So 4-way flex pick there. Nidalee, we only really see in the jungle. We have seen people on the off, the Shy, I'm pretty sure, played lane Nidalee not too long ago. It looked terrible, but I mean, there you go. Someone played lane Nidalee. Only really going to see it jungle though. Nyla is an ADC pick. You're not really going to see Nyla anywhere outside of the ADC role. Nocturne used to be a 3-way flex pick. You're not going to see him anywhere outside of the jungle at the moment. Nunu technically sees play in 2 roles. He can be played both as a mid laner and a jungler. However, you do have to know how to play him correctly as a mid laner. Otherwise, you're just griefing. Olaf works in 2 roles. He works both as a top laner and a jungler. Jungle Olaf definitely not as good as it used to be, but he can still clear, and it's not too bad. Orianna works as a mid laner. You're not really going to see any Orianna top or support these days. Ornn actually works as a mid laner quite well. Has value there, but not really going to see any Ornn support or junglers. Pantheon works as a support, a mid laner, a top laner, and a jungler. He is technically a 4-way flex pick. Not too bad in any of his roles, actually. He got buffed as a jungler. He works quite well as a top and a mid laner. His worst role is probably support, but if you have strong pairings and it functions quite, and like into a bot lane, it functions quite well, and it still works quite well as a pick. Poppy is a mid laner, a top laner, a jungler, and a support. She's also a 4-role flex pick. Her mid lane is really only going to be seen if you're playing into things like Yasuo's or high mobility champions. But because it works quite well into those, she actually has merit as a mid laner. Pyke is a 1-way flex pick. You're not going to see Pyke played anywhere other than support these days. I don't think Pyke mid even holds a 1% presence at the moment. But yeah, moving on. Kiana is going to be played in the mid lane and in the jungle. She does see play in the top lane, I believe. She used to actually be quite a popular top laner for some people. Pyke sees a 2% presence in the mid lane. Not really enough to kind of have him moved. But yeah, Kiana sees 3% pick rate in the top lane. I think it's a very niche pick, which like one tricks often take up there, but can work. For the most part, you're mainly only going to see jungle and mid Kiana, not really anything else. Quinn is a 2-way flex pick. Actually, not a bad mid laner. I've definitely seen a lot more Quinn mid recently. Things like Static and Youmuu's work really well on this champion, as being able to just shove waves and roam about makes her really powerful. Still really good top laner, so definitely can do something there. Rakan only really works as a support. I know certain people like AP Rakan mid, but I think it's either very niche or kind of situational, so mostly only going to be Rakan support. Rammus as a top laner and a jungler. The Baus, I mean, that kind of says it all. Now, Rammus top actually does work quite well if you're able to get the playstyle down where you have your alternating points in WE, you have your Formel, your Sork, stuff like this. He does a lot of damage. You do have to play into very heavy AD compositions to make it work, though. Rek'Sai, really strong mid and jungler. Rao, really strong jungler and support. Renata, only really a support. Renekton, a mid laner and a top laner. Rengar, a top laner and a jungler. Riven, a mid laner and a top laner. Doesn't have the worst jungler in the world, but I would not recommend it. Rumble has seen play in like every role, but for the most part you're going to see mid, top and jungle Rengar. Rumble, I don't think we're going to see any support Rumble these days. Kind of like a niche pick brought up by T1 again. Rai sees play in 2 roles, both in the top lane and the mid lane. Samira sees play only in the ADC role. Sejuani sees play in 3 roles. She's doing pretty badly at the moment, but she does have strong lanes which she can beat in both top and mid. Senna sees play in 2 roles, both as a ADC and a support. Seraphine, actually a good pick in 3 roles. Support, mid, and AD. She functions in all of them. Set, 2 roles, both mid and top set are pretty good. Shaco, support. I mean, Shaco is a 4-way flex pick. Like, people play him a decent amount in all 4 roles. He plays top, he plays mid, he plays jungle, and he plays support. He mostly sees mid Shaco is mostly played by people like Vigard V2. Top Shaco, I'm pretty sure Pinkward plays a lot of it. Support Shaco, I know, is a pretty strong low elo pick, but his traps can be really frustrating. But overall, can function in 4 roles. We might see changes to that with the nerf sticks patch, but we'll have to see. But can function in all 4. Shen, only really going to see play in the top and mid lane. You're not really going to see any of these River Shen or Support Shen. I don't think Support Shen even holds like a good play rate. I mean, actually, Support Shen is played a lot more than mid Shen. You know what? Shen, I'll actually move up to 3 rows. I thought, I expect to once, at one point, popularized mid Shen. Definitely was performing really well on the pick, and it does win into a lot of mid laners, but obviously the play rate's fallen a bit. Support Shen is kind of like it fits his identity as a pick. I don't think it's great, but definitely can function there. Top Shen is where you're mainly going to see him, but yeah, 3-way flex pick. Shyvana, 2-way flex pick, but top is kind of going to die again with the nerfs. It's poor times for Shyvana. She should definitely function both as a jungler and a top laner. I think that'll be good to see, but yeah, the nerfs are definitely going to hurt. But still, 2-roll flex pick. Singed, only really going to see play mid and top. We're not going to see any of this support or jungle Singed. I don't think it supports a great play rate in both. Yeah, fairly mediocre in both, but people do play it. But for the most part, mid and top is where you're going to see him. Sion is a 2-roll, well, it's a 3-roll flex pick. He has a really strong jungle clear. He works really well as a top laner, and he does work really well as a mid laner as well. You're not going to see any ADC Sion because that's mostly when you have the center pairing. But yeah, does work as a 3-roll flex pick. Sivir is a one pick. You're not going to see her anywhere other than ADC. Skarner can play top lane. I don't think a lot of people play Skarner top, but I could be wrong on this one. You know what? It sees enough play that it kind of has merit. I know he does quite heavily abuse a lot of top laners, especially if you're playing in River and you're really making use of your Spires. Sona, you're not going to see anywhere other than just support. Soraka does technically function as a 4-way flex pick, has relatively good top lane wave clear and mid lane wave clear, can work as an ADC, can also work as a support, but she doesn't really see play outside of support, I believe, which kind of sucks because I know that people used to play a lot more Soraka in other places. I'll put her as a top and a support flex pick. I just don't think she supports enough of our pick rate within the other 2 roles to kind of like support them. Swain is a 3-way flex pick. You see him top, mid, and support. Well, he's actually a 4-way flex pick because you can see him ADC as well. I think Swain actually has value in all 4 of his roles. He works as a really good AP frontline mage. Does a lot of damage, but yeah, relatively tanky, so functions in all 4 of these roles relatively well. Mid is definitely going to be his best role though. Silas is a 3-way flex pick. He works top, mid, and jungle. We used to see some Silas support in the days of Leona Varus meta, but doesn't see a huge amount of play, so I'm only really going to recommend him as 3-ways. Syndra only really sees play as a mid laner, not really going to see her anywhere other than that. Tabkej as a support and a top laner. Talia as a mid and a jungler. I don't believe Talia support sees any play at the moment, but could be wrong. It's not a huge amount of play, it's very limited, but I guess it's enough to kind of say that she does see some support play. It can function quite well into dash heavy bot lanes, so there is merit there. Talon works well as a jungler and a mid laner. Tarek actually can play top, mid, jungle, and support relatively well. His jungle clear is not too bad. His top lane isn't too bad. His mid lane isn't too bad. But then you're only really going to see Tarek as a support and a jungler. The champ to begin with isn't even that popular. So yeah, I'll leave him in 2-role because yeah, jungle and support is the best roles for him. Teemo, only really going to see him in the top lane. I know Teemo functions as a jungler because his clear has been buffed and he is double blind on monsters. Teemo mid also sees some play, and Teemo support for the idea of being able to blind the ADC does work. I think in a way he can be considered like a 2-role flex pick. I wouldn't recommend trying to take Teemo into the jungle or the mid lane, but there are places where it works. So yeah, I'll put him in 2-role. Thresh, only really going to see play as a support. Tristana is a 3-way flex pick. Top, mid, and AD all work quite well there. Trundle used to see play a bit as a support, but it's mostly just jungle top Trundle at the moment. Trinidad mid and top. I don't think Trinidad jungle sees play that much anymore either. Nah, not really. Twisted Fate as a mid laner, Twitch as a mid laner, ADC and a support. Udit as a jungler and a top laner. Argot is a weird one because Argot can play the jungle. He can also play mid lane, and I know people like taking Argot into the mid lane, but he only really sees play in the top lane. So I'm just gonna leave him in the one way because yeah, you're really only gonna see Argot top. Varus top did exist for a bit, but it's now only really Varus mid and ADC, which still stand. Vayne as a top laner, a mid laner, and ADC do work. Veigar as an ADC, a mid laner, and a support, I guess. I know people do like Veigar support for the cage value. Vel'Koz as a mid laner and a support. Vex as a mid laner. You're not really going to see any Vex support anymore. Vi as a jungler. Viego as a jungler. Don't really see Viego lane that much anymore either. Victor as a top laner and a mid laner. I know Victor top actually used to sustain a pretty high play rate, but it's not played too much anymore, but it still does function. Vladimir as a mid laner and a top laner. Volibear as a jungler and a top laner. Warwick as a jungler and a top laner. Wukong as a jungler and a top laner. Xayah as an ADC. Xerath as a mid laner and a support. Xin as a jungler. You're not going to see Xin lane at the moment. The champ isn't popular, but he can function within both. So I guess in a way. Yasuo as a 3-way flex pick. He can play ADC, mid and top. Yone as a 2-way. He plays mid and top. Yorick as a 1-way. You're not going to see him in the jungle or the mid lane. However, I know he does function in both those roles. Just not seeing like any play. So just going to leave him in the 1-way pick. Yuumi as a... Well, yeah, Yuumi is obviously just tied to on-hit ADCs. This champ bugs the shit out of me. Zac as a 4-way flex pick. Actually works as a top, mid, jungle, and support pick quite well. Zed as a 2-way pick. You're not going to see Zed past the jungle or mid lane that much. I think Zed top maybe, but not a huge amount. Zeri as a 1-way pick. You're not going to see like AP Zeri mid anymore. Ziggs as a 2-way pick. Both mid and ADC see a decent amount of play. Zilean as a 2-way pick. Once again, it's going to be mid and support. Zoe as a 2-way pick. I think Zoe support isn't too bad. And Zoe mid does see a good amount of play. And Zyra as a 2-way pick. I don't think Zyra's jungle clear is good enough to really merit her as a jungler. Its play rate has also died relatively quickly. So, yeah, Zyra support is mainly where you're going to see her. Not really anywhere else other than that. So, overall, those are the thoughts. I think there are a lot of champions which can technically function in other roles than what I've said, but it's either very limited, we don't see the play rate, or they're very unique and niche towards that role. So much so that I'm going to limit them down to, like, the more sensible role that they, should belong in or they have better functionalities in. So yeah, overall those are the thoughts. If you enjoy my content, like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.